We're now going to learn how to do factoring by grouping, since this is how they want us to factor these. Now, when you do factoring by grouping, what we're going to do is we're first going to factor the first two terms, and then the second two terms, we're going to do that separately. So to do that, we're going to take a look at just the first two, and we're going to look at what can we factor out of the first two terms and what can we factor with the second two terms. So it's like we're doing two separate problems there. Now, the first two, the most you're going to be able to factor out will be the smallest power of x, which in this case is going to be x squared. So I'm going to take x squared, and we're only working with the first two terms only. If I take a cube and I have three x's, I'm taking out two of them, I'll have one x left over. And then x squared divided by x squared is a plus 1. So that would be, if I just wanted to factor the first two terms only, that's what it would look like. Okay, I have the common factor of x squared in those. Now the second two, the common factor would be a 15, since I see 15 is repeated twice there. So I'm going to put the plus 15. I'm just going to put it directly after the first one. So plus 15. And then I want to factor this one also. So again, factoring is a type of division. If I take 15x divided by 15, I get x. 15 divided by 15 is going to be plus 1. Now that that's complete, we now need to factor out the common factor of x plus 1. To do that, you put down x plus 1. And then you just put whatever is left over. So if we get rid of the x plus 1s, all you have left is x squared plus 15. And that's what's going to go inside the parentheses here. So if I were to multiply this back out, I would have x squared times x plus 1. And then I would have 15 times x plus 1. And I get the same thing that I started with. And of course, I could multiply this back through to get back up to the top. So again, you can always multiply everything all out, FOIL it, and you'll get the same thing that you started with on top, which is the idea here. That's how you can check your work. Let's do the next one. Okay, so the next one, again, is another one we're going to do by factoring by grouping here. All right, so I have the first two and the second two I want to factor individually. I have 3x cubed minus 15x squared. The common factor here, there's a 3 that's repeated there, and there's also an x. I can take out the smaller power of x, which would be x squared here. So I have x squared and I have x cubed, so I'm taking out x squared there. Next, I need to factor. So again, I'm only working with the first two terms. I'm only factoring the first two here. 3x cubed divided by 3x squared. It's going to leave an x left over. Negative 15x squared divided by 3x squared. Negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5. And then x squared divided by x squared would be a 1. So I can just leave it as x minus 5. Next, the next two here. A 4 would be the common factor in each, because 20 I can divide by 4 and get an integer. So 4 is what I want to factor out of this. 4x divided by 4 is x. And then negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. Again, we see the repeated terms. A question that often comes up here is, what happens if these are not the same? Well, if they're not the same, that means you actually have something that cannot be factored. And it is possible you may come and have something like that. But most of these problems that you'll see of this type here should be ones where you'll get the same thing repeated. But if they're not the same, then go back and check your work. It's possible that you might have made a mistake. And if you did everything correctly, then it's possible that maybe the answer, it's prime, that can't be factored. But for this one, we have the same thing repeated. So we're going to factor out x minus 5. If you got rid of the x minus 5s here, what you would have left over is 3x squared plus 4. And that would be your final answer. Again, you could always FOIL it, multiply all this out, and you should get the same thing that you started with. All right, let's do one more. All right, so this one, I want to factor the first two and the second two. Okay, the first two, I'm going to factor out x squared would be the only common factor between the first two terms. I have 3x's, take out 2 of them, I'll have 1 of them left over. Negative 2x squared divided by x squared, just get minus 2. With these two here, 17 would be a common factor because 17 does divide into 34. So we're going to do plus 17 will be what I'm going to factor out. 17x divided by 17 is x. Negative 34 divided by 17 is negative 2. Again, as you see there, you have a repeated term. That's a common factor that repeats. The one that repeats, we're going to factor out x minus 2. If you get rid of the x minus 2s, then what you have left over is x squared plus 17. And there's nothing more we can do on that. That would be fully factored. So then if you multiply this back through again, you should again get the same thing that you started with.